The Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett.
Everybody's talking about consciousness. Everybody wants that eternal kiss. Everyone's saying there's more than this. Everyone wants to follow their own bliss. Talking about one love, one blood, one light in everyone. One life, give each other. We are sisters and brothers. We sing
On the Expansion Zone, we examine life and our quest to understand who and what we are and of the vastness of human potentials. We explore the making of our world from quantum physics to parapsychology, health, sociology, and philosophy, along with practical living. You are reminded of the possibilities in creating personal change. So for an hour, we'll stimulate and expand the mind.
shanty, 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 shanty. See the world. Shanty, 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 shanty. It's time to wake up. Shanty, shanty, shanty.
Well, welcome once again to another edition of The Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett. I'm, of course, your host, Sonia Barrett. And as always, thank you for tuning in on this Monday. I've got a really, really interesting and different show today. It's always fascinating, right? You're not sure what I'm coming with next. I like to keep it very interesting, expanding the mind. Anyway, I'd like to also remind you that tomorrow is the beginning of the fund drive, KPFK's fund drive. And of course, you know, we plan to, as always, deliver great content and life-changing information while you continue to support the station. And we thank you for your past support, and we thank you for your coming support. And of course, that's why I say we continue to strive to bring you information that keeps you listening. You keep wanting to tune in, especially on Mondays at 1, right? See what I'm coming with next. All right, well, I can say this. Today our guest is going to be Heidi Hollis, and she is the author of several books, but specifically I'm naming this one, author of The Hat Man, The True Story of Evil Encounters. And so the topic today is going to be about the phenomenon of the shadow people and the Hat Man. Now, we share space with many different worlds, and this is the reason why I wanted to do the show just like the show we did last week, where we were talking about out-of-body experiences and sleep paralysis and all of those things, because they're happening to people all over the place, all over the world. People are having different experiences. And so today's show is venturing where we haven't gone there before. We haven't gone down this road before. And I've covered this topic previously on other shows that I've hosted in the past. Let's see. Well, one of the things I want to remind you of is that we really are part of a vast network of experiences, a vast network of realms and possibilities. And so the turmoil in our world, political or religious, whatever our views are, doesn't really erase the many forms of life, worlds, or realms that actually do exist. We are, however, in a state of constant distraction. So today's show will bring to the forefront, really, some of these anomalies occurring all around us 24/7, whether you may have consciously experienced it or not. And that's the whole idea, is, again, to examine. We're not alone in any way, however you want to think of that. But there's spaces between the spaces. And so sometimes that pops through. That which is in those spaces are popping through as veils get thinner, or maybe perhaps we become more open to realizing that there is more to life than just us and perhaps the narrow perspectives that we have been trained to have about life. Doesn't matter whether you believe or not. Guess what? Life is doing what it's doing. Just as time keeps moving, whether you believe in it or not, time is there. And we see this because of history. People aren't here, but life is still going on. So anyway, a little bit about my guest. No author can say they've named and defined two paranormal realities like Heidi Hollis. Hollis is a truth seeker of the unknown. She considers herself as someone who has been there, seen that, experienced it, freaked out, found some answers, wrote about it, got over it, and now helps others to do the same to understand this strange world of ours. Heidi Hollis is the world's foremost expert on shadow people and the Hat Man phenomena, and has helped countless people get rid of them. She is a lively radio talk show host, author, cartoonist, and lecturer on various topics, from current events to mysteries. Holly has been featured on various television and radio programs around the globe. Most notably, she has appeared on the Unexplained Files, Beyond Belief, Strange Evidence, Mystery Hunters, the Science Channel, TBS, SyFy Channel, Steven Spielberg's Taken tour, a cast member of the Discovery Channel pilot series X-Ops, and the list goes on. So I had to give you that rundown. So when we start talking, you have, some reference point, and she's of course, going to fill us in even more. So Heidi Hollis, welcome to the Expansion Zone.
Hey there. Thanks so much for the awesome introduction. How are you today, Sonia?
I am fantastic.
Cool.
Very excited about this topic. I posted, I always post what show is coming up next on Facebook, and it was really interesting to see how many people jumped on the bandwagon of starting to leave their experiences on Facebook. And a lot of this stuff people don't talk about. They just kind of keep it to themselves. So let's start out by having you perhaps just maybe give us somewhat of a condensed version of what we're talking about when we're talking about shadow people, and then perhaps lead into what led you down this path of wanting to dig into this even further.
Oh man, I tell you, I first off, I'm not surprised that you had such a reaction. I am always just blown away by the response and the many people that come and just share, like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have reports in the thousands. So when it comes to shadow people, they're actually, they can shapeshift into a lot of different things. So they could come as a black cloud, a black cat, or a black rodent. It's just kind of a shadowy mass that could take on these different forms. And probably the most intimidating one is what I call the head and shoulder shadow, which kind of looks like a man with hulking shoulders with its head directly connected to its shoulders. Sometimes you can see glowing red eyes, but not always. And sometimes people will see them head on, but usually they'll catch them on their peripheral vision and turn, and God forbid it's still there sometimes, other times not, but people are like, what am I seeing? And those that have woke up to these horrible creatures usually wake up because they feel they're paralyzed. They feel something's choking them. They feel pinned down. They feel a sense of horror and terror unlike anything they've imagined, and they're like, I'm awake. Why can't I move? What is going on here? Now, then there is the even more horrific phenomena, something I named the Hat Man. I initially called him the Hat Man Shadow, so that's why a lot of people will say shadow people in regards to Hat Man. But I corrected it a bit and more or less defined him as being something more solid, as being something that can be just as you and I sitting there. He's got a three-piece suit on, sometimes wears a cape, a trench coat, sometimes wears a hat. Well, most of the time he does, but not always, but it's usually a gaucho hat or a top hat. But I also have reports of him wearing a cowboy hat. I mean, all sorts of things. And his eyes can be a glowing red, and if you see his skin, which a lot of people, I mean, he's just as solid as your eye, but if you see his skin, his eyes are solid black. Sometimes he's clean-shaven, other times he's not. But still, the menacing presence is, my soul is in danger. That is the number one thing that comes off from that guy, and he's often in control of the shadowy beings that people report. So, and I have always, for years, from the start, I have connected these creatures to UFO phenomena, aliens. People sometimes report seeing these right alongside of so-called aliens. And I mean, is it a coincidence that these people who have experienced these things, as far as aliens are concerned, also have shadow people encounters? It's like, what is going on here? Or they've experienced poltergeist encounters or ghostly encounters. It's like, hold on. This is a pattern, and I don't believe anything is a coincidence, especially when it comes to these types of things, that, there's a link. And I used to think, gosh, I'm just really unlucky. You know, what is going on here? But I'm not unlucky. This is the world that we live in. The paranormal phenomena has its links and its ties. And that's been one of my goals from the beginning, straight out of college. I was still in college when I wrote my first book called The Secret War, talking about this conflict in alien contact and how shadow people were involved. And it's just grown and grown. The first time I got on the radio, I had thousands of emails dumped on me, and they have never stopped. It's like all over the world, people are experiencing these horrific things. And, then the scientific community chimes in, and they're going to make it all better and tell you, oh, it's sleep paralysis. Give me a break. Really? Sleep paralysis wears a hat and a three-piece suit? I didn't know that. That's pretty dang specific. So I like to keep things on the real when it comes to this phenomena.
Well, we want to explain it away. That's kind of
they
what
want
it
to
is.
explain it away. And I'm an occupational therapist. My specialty is in psychology, patients with psychological issues and whatnot, cognitive function issues. And it's like, come on now. I God forbid they Google me before I see my patients, but sometimes it's like, oh boy. But it's I just want to make it a clear distinction that this is something that's really happening, and it's been happening for a very long time. I have people who've written me who have had things happen once and dread for 40 years that they'll ever see it again, and people who have experienced it for 40 years their entire lives. So it's a big phenomenon.
Well, but in terms of your perhaps first experience with encountering any of this, what I mean, do you? I think you remember, but what happened? I mean, was it in childhood? For some people, it's when they were children, and then it takes a break, and maybe it doesn't happen again, or maybe it happens again.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a haunted house, so
oh, there you go.
From the start. Yeah. So the first experience started when I was 8 years old. However, I didn't see it as shadow people at that time. I now conclude that it must have been them the entire span of my life, because I don't think it's a coincidence that I've had crazy things happen for so long. It's just been it's been an interesting journey, to say the least. But it's not all been negative as far as different experiences. Not when it comes to shadow people or Hat Man. Some people like to say, "Oh, I think he's my guardian angel." I'm like, he's not your guardian angel. He's negative 100% of the time. There are these shadow beings. But I think people like myself who may be a little bit sensitive to seeing things, that we see the whole spectrum. So that's what I mean by that. But so I saw something that was my first outright encounter with a shadow being. I was walking with a college friend, and it was broad daylight, and she's walking along just talking, and I thought I saw something in my periphery, and I saw a dark mass go from a tree to a bush to a bush to a tree. And I'm like, what am I seeing? You know, I'm like, I'm not saying anything to my friend. We reach our destination. When we come back, this thing followed us all the way back. And by that time, I was just beside myself. Being a cartoonist, I'm like, okay, hold on. And we step in the door, and I go to my friend. You know, I kind of feel safe. I'm like, look, I don't know what I saw, but I just saw this thing. And I drew the head and shoulder shadow. And if people want to see what I'm talking about, if they go to HeidiHollis.com, they can see the different types of shadow beings that are most commonly reported. So I saw that thing, and I draw this to her, and I'm thinking, my friend is just going to bust out laughing, and, you know, this is going to be, you know, the end of this conversation. But she takes a look at the drawing, and she goes, oh, that thing. Gosh, man, you know, I don't know what that thing is, but it's been following me since I was a kid. And I'm like, what? And then she shows her dad, hey, Dad, look, Heidi saw him too now. And he goes, what, is that guy back? And I'm like, what is going on here? Now, it gets worse because I was staying at our family's home, and I had to go upstairs to get something from the second floor, and it was like an attic. It was broad daylight still outside, so I didn't turn the lights on or anything, and I'd go in there and grab what I needed, and I turn around to leave the room, and that thing was standing there blocking my way out of the room. And I still get chills every time I think about it because I don't think I ever felt so threatened in my life, and I just felt that it wanted to kill me. I knew it did, and I mean, it's a strange thing to say that your soul screamed out in horror, and I just knew if I ran, it was going to get me. If I swung at it, it was going to get me. So I just kind of closed my eyes, and I started saying a prayer, and I walked very slowly and methodically through this thing, and I got to the top of the stairs, and I literally collapsed just in a fumble. But that started this journey. Little did I know that, you know, I started having nightmares soon after that, and I didn't connect the two at the time, but I started having nightmares, but I was awake, and I was seeing these giant, shadowy spiders, like the size of a grown man or the entire ceiling of my bedroom. And sometimes millions of little spiders, and they're all shadowy and black, and I'm like, I'm getting up, I'm grabbing shoes and brooms, I'm like, where did this, you know, man killer come from? But, yeah, and that started the journey to realizing I was experiencing something I had never seen or heard of before, and I just started calling them shadow people, because it just best described kind of what I was seeing, but and my friends that knew me, I didn't feel that I had to re-describe everything. I was just like, you know, the shadow people things. They're like, oh, okay.
Okay, those.
Kind of, yeah. It's like, yeah, they came last night again. It's like, geez. And yeah, so
yeah,
that started that. That's crazy.
That it is. And of course, you know, I shared my story. And of course, so I'm going to share it with the audience real quick as well, because this is really what sort of led me to wanting to do the show, even though this happened to me maybe, I think in 2000, so almost 20 years ago. But I was going through something in my life. It was a very intense period in my life in 2000. And I remember just that. I woke up to this shadow man, except for this time it was the hat and the cape. And I did not hesitate. I immediately used a series of words that I normally don't use in a way.
It's just among friends. Come on, let's hear it.
You know, I used it in such a forceful way because this presence was getting ready to lay on top of me. And I just immediately just said, get the you-know-what out of here. And I said it with such force and intensity and seriousness. There was like no reservation about this. You need to go like right now. And so that was the last time I had seen it. But this morning I was talking to my my older son right before the show, and we were kind of talking about this stuff. And it was only then that I realized that actually, no, you saw him one time before. So I didn't remember that, but I remember that moment. But so fast forward, it wasn't until maybe 2 years ago when I went to a conference. I went to speak at this conference, and I was getting ready to leave, actually, but this other gentleman was speaking, and I thought, okay, well, let me hear a little bit of what he had to say. And it came up in his talk, because he was talking about UFOs. But it came up in his talk. He mentioned it. And it was only in that moment that I realized that other people see this. And then I heard a couple of people go, oh, yeah, I've seen it. And then that's when I spoke up. But I just kind of moved on. But I didn't really realize that people were seeing this. The shadow stuff at the peripheral vision, I've seen that. I accepted that, but I had never seen this before. So that was my experience with that. And, I consider myself, quite whatever you want to call it, centered, balanced, but I realize that there's spaces between the spaces. See, this is what makes me be accepting of all of this, because I know that there are other realms there. They're just there. And we just happen to see that. So go ahead, but you were gonna say something.
Oh no, I am not surprised. It's always mind blowing to me how many people tuck these things in the back of their memory and they just kind of move forward. It's like, well, glad that never happened again, Or my favorite is when people say, I think my eyes are playing tricks on me. I'm like, oh, those same eyes that drive you to work every day? You trust those eyes? And, all of a sudden, you don't trust them in that instance. It's hilarious to me.
Because it's so outside of our everyday reality, so to speak. Yeah.
To say Zorro came in your bedroom last night, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know, boy. That was, it kind of did have that Zorro sort of vibe with the cape and the hat. That is crazy. Yeah. So, okay, so I've got a couple questions here I want to get into, but I have to throw this in also real quickly. But so earlier I had texted my son and my older son, and I was asking him, because I know he's seen a lot of stuff. He's one of those people. He's had a whole lot of stuff that's gone on, and he's like, I don't even want to bring it up. Don't even make me talk about it. So I text him and I asked him, I said, I forgot to ask you, I'm reading the text. I forgot to ask you if you've ever experienced the shadow people, because I couldn't remember. And he said, and then I said, I know you have had some visitors in the past while in bed. And he texts me back and he goes, hell of a morning question, but when your mom is Sonia Barrett. He's like, LMAO.
Oh, that's funny. That's a good one.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is funny. So,
wow.
So let's talk about what this looks like in the sense of, saying, look, I don't want to deal with this. There are people that are having this happen like on a regular basis. What does that look like to say, if somebody says...
Oh, to say that it happens on a regular basis?
Well, no, to say, gosh, I don't want, to cut it off, to stop this. I mean...
Oh, I see, to stop it. It takes a lot of oomph and a lot of sass, first off, but it takes a lot of the opposite opposing force of that darkness, that evil. And, a lot of people are too shy to say the name of Jesus or God these days, but you better sprinkle some Jesus on it, because that's what it takes. You are looking into the eyeballs of something that claims, if he talks to you, to be the devil himself. So, let's think, who can oppose that? Well, Jesus. And, so I'm never shy to say that that's what it takes. And I had to come full circle back to the other F word, as I call it, faith. And I actually have a couple of books called that, the other F word, How to Find Faith and Laugh at Yourself While Trying. Because, I get so many of these people who are like, look, oh my God, shadow people and the Hat Man, they're torturing me every night. I think they're going to kill me. I'm pretty sure they pulled my soul out of my body and drugged me across my bed. Oh, but I don't get into that religious stuff, but tell me, what should I do? Oh, okay, let me think. What's close to your nightstand? Is there an alarm clock? Can you throw that at it? Because if you're not going to fight fire with fire, you really are on the losing side. You really are.
Have to be you have to have a sense of grounding too. I mean, I think
you do.
You do. You have to, I think, really own your power. Like in the instance I gave you, it was for me no hesitation. It was like no hesitation. Right. But then I do that though with other things that are anomalies where I am like very firm on it. Like, look, I don't know what you want, but I don't have time for you. So I'm always very firm. And fear, which is tough to not be afraid, but fear feeds the stuff. And it's like permission to mess with you.
Oh, yeah, it does. And that's another thing. It's like people say, I would never give permission for this thing to come at me. I'm like, it cheats in getting your permission. It cheats. It could be a dream. It could be somebody knocking at your door and you're like, it looks like my brother, but, I don't know. My gut is telling me it's not him, but I'm going to open up the door anyways. Oh, well, you open up a door. It's symbolic in a sense. And it's like all of a sudden you wake up and you got shadow people in your room. What's going on here? It's so strange. Some of the scenarios that people have written me about to say I had this weird dream about this, and that. And I think I gave it permission, but it's like, sometimes, people are so harped on, what did I do? What is it? And it's not always that they're spiritually screwed because this thing is coming at them, but because they're so spiritually open and may have a gift. I find that to be a common factor as to why these things are attracted, as well as, unfortunately, there are a lot of agnostics and atheists that comes after too. And, it's like, what is it to have faith? It is to feel a basis. It is to feel grounded in something, in a bigger power of something. So, I'm Christian, and I'm, a lot of people, they've turned their backs on their faith for a variety of reasons. They put a lot of faith in the leader of the church, and, he fell. Well, I guess I'm out, But sadly, it's like people need to find their roots on this stuff.
And I think you just said it. I think you just said it. They have to find your root. I think you have to find your centeredness. You have to find that, because even if it's topical, because you can say, I go to church and I, all of that, but it doesn't really mean that you're even rooted in that faith either. So there has to be a strong centeredness in a more expansive self or something, a greater level, in order to, I'm going to use the word override, many of these things. And, Heidi, I also think that part of what happens is because it's what we don't understand, obviously, and because we don't understand, we feel vulnerable, and we're left, I think, very vulnerable. But I think the more that we can even just own the fact that we're just not alone, that there are these other spaces, I think that can start maybe helping people to get more centered, more balanced, not so afraid of the dark.
Oh, yeah. These things feed off from fear. I have had countless people say, I screamed, or I couldn't scream, or I felt I was going to die, then I finally gave up, like, just kill me already. And once they let go of the fear, the thing left.
Well, that's just it.
Like, isn't that something? It's like, okay.
It's like, but who's in charge?
It doesn't come back.
Right. Yeah, it's the, who's in charge, what do you give your power away to? But I think also in our world, I think people are sort of programmed to always give their power over to something else, someone else. It's always something else that is more capable than you. So when comes time to exercise your own power, or your own centeredness, it gets difficult.
I've had a lot of people who are, they have different beliefs that are being haunted and taunted by these things. And, I come at it from the perspective that I do because I know that it works, There's people who come at it from a Wiccan standpoint, and, they use this and they use that. But, I'll tell you, though, oftentimes that doesn't work. And I get a lot of people that come back to me and say, So I had somebody come through and do this blessing on the home or did this and that, and it came right back, and I'm like, it's a matter of you're fighting fire with fire. You really have to, and it's like I understand the perspectives of the human potential is something to be reckoned with. It really is, and it is about putting your ethereal foot down. But this thing is bigger and badder and older than so much more than I think people are realizing. It is placing its bets on us not to get this right, for us to just, flounder and try to sprinkle a little salt on the door. And it's like, ooh, that's not working, is it?
Well, it's all right. Yeah, absolutely. But it's because it's all about you. It's all about you. Because just what you said, when people go and they get, the house blessed, somebody comes over, but that person still has not addressed this. It has to be you.
It has to be them.
Yes.
I tell them that. I'm like, you hid behind their faith? That's not going to work. So.
Yeah, and then it doesn't. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
No, it doesn't. It comes right at them, and it comes back worse sometimes. And I'm just like, people are like, well, what does it take? And that's why I felt it was necessary to write the round of books that I have, because I got 8 out there, and it's like, because I got the same questions over and over again. Well, what do I do? Oh, I don't believe in anything, but I really need help with this. I'm like, well, how can I get that spark in people to realize that there are things out there that are rooting for you to get this right? And that thing, I call it God, Jesus. People call it different things, and I've had friends and whatever that from different faiths who have used what they know that works for them. And they've had success with it, not always lasting success, but, everybody has their belief system. I recognize and acknowledge that to have some success. But I just I felt that I had to tap and hit the right button. So I'm like, I've got a book on Jesus encounters. I got one on angel encounters. I got one on faith, with comics to try to get people to realize, don't be so darn hard on yourselves. Get to the point of comfort in having some kind of a belief system in something. I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm not somebody to cram stuff down your throat, and I don't think that ever works. But what concerns me the most, a lot of people are like, God, so much is going wrong in this world. I can't wait till it ends. And I'm like, no, we'd lose too many people. People are lost out there, and they don't believe in anything. And, there's so much wrong going on, and it's because people are lost in themselves. And, just trying to find that angle, the passion to try to get people to find that again. I just find that to be such a big driving point for myself to, wake people up, and to take it easy. It's okay. God made us, right? And He knew we were flawed in absolutely 100% of everything, but the one area we're not supposed to have any flaws or doubts is our belief in Him. It's not something. It's like, no, He knew that would happen, so it's okay.
Right. Well, and again, I think with everything you're saying, I think at the end of the day, if you're not fully invested in a grounding or centeredness, or like you said, or whatever your belief is, if it's in God or what that represents for you, you have to have a solidness in yourself about whatever it is, because again, you can go to church or you can go here and you can go there, but doesn't mean that you are fully invested in any of it. And so, yes, at the end of the day, you still end up being vulnerable. And so you keep running to here and there, trying to hope that something out there will resolve it. But then it just comes right back to you. So no matter what we do, it comes back to you, the individual. It always keeps doing that.
It does. But again, a lot of the times, this darkness is attracted to people who are such bright lights. It's like a fly to a flame. I mean, these things want to stomp out that light. They don't want that guide that guide in the dark to others to help them find better paths. No. So they surround and try to choke that person out and make them doubt themselves and isolate themselves. And I mean, it's a constant battle. And there's so many people that write to me so heavily depressed about what it is they're experiencing, and they don't feel they have anyone to turn to. And I'm like, well, you know, do you have friends and family? Well, yeah, but they'll just laugh. Or, oh, I expressed myself and they'll never let me live it down. And, you know, I'm like, man, you know, how it's like become spiritual abuse out there, to be honest. It's like, come on now. You love these people, but you're essentially put them in a cage and not allowing them to vent who they are and what they're experiencing. They just fought for their lives in the middle of the night, or fought. I mean, these things are they attack, they bite, they scratch, and they rape people. Now, these people that survive these attacks in the night and then they have to go to work and act like nothing happened, it's devastating, and it causes people to have PTSD, suicidal, sometimes homicidal, because these things whisper in their ear, why don't you go kill everybody at work? Why don't you kill your kid? The most horrific things.
And this is interesting, because this is what you're hearing from from people from all over the world. Yeah, Heidi, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to pick up where we left off in terms of talking about the fact that, you know, these are people from all different parts of the world that are giving these stories that don't know each other. So stay tuned, and we will be right back after this.
Hey, everybody. This is Eric Mann, the host of Voices from the Frontlines. Excited that Tuesday we're going to move from 3 to 2 for the fun drive in the afternoon. And the premium is going to be this amazing 4-DVD set about the great Paul Robeson, called Portrait of the Artist, which are his films. Paul Robeson was the great athlete, singer, anti-war organizer, friend of the Soviet Union, attacked by his own government. There's a wonderful commentary by Sidney Poitier about his life using the theme of Old Man River. It's one of my absolute favorite premiums. It's $250, well worth it, great for the holidays. Please join me Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Voices from the Frontlines, a tribute to Paul Robeson. See you then.
KPFK, community radio for peace, justice, art, music, culture.
And we are back. And of course, you're listening to The Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett. I am your host, of course. And we're coming to you from KPFK 90.7 FM in Southern California. And my guest today is Heidi Hollis, and we are talking about a very interesting subject matter, shadow people, the Hat Man phenomenon that, you know, many people just don't talk about. It's one of those things where you don't want to be looked at a certain way, or, you know, I think a lot of times that's basically what it is. People don't want to be looked at a certain way, so they don't share that information with anybody until they see an opportunity to, like on Facebook earlier, you know, where they started to be able to expose that there some entire families. One person said, my whole family has been dealing with this. So very, very interesting. So.
Yeah. It runs in families a lot, sadly.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. It's there's other stories that I certainly, you know, could tell in terms of what we've also seen and heard in my house at the time, and didn't know that all three of us were seeing the same thing either. And that's a story for another day. But we didn't say anything, and it was, you know, it was loud. I mean, it was something that you could hear, and I thought, is it just me? And then it would just disappear. And then eventually, when we were talking, it was me and my two sons at the time, and only to find out that they each were experiencing this. So this is. You know, again, this is really more than anything else for me, Heidi, on the show, is just, if people have never experienced this before, that's fine. But I think it's just the realization that there is just a lot more going on than meets the eye, than just where we lock our eyes into our distractions and not see. Now, You also had said, it's something that I read. Of course, this has been going on since the beginning of time, and and its influence. You said its dark influence on society. Now, are there any things that you can say that it may play a role in terms of our society in a way that we would not even imagine? Is there anything that you've seen or heard that would imply certain things?
What's been fascinating to me are learning of some of the most, this is more modern day influences. I know way back in I don't know, it was the 1600s or something, where witches would see a man on a black horse riding with a cape, and it sounded like the Hat Man type of phenomena going on. But more in modern days, I found it really fascinating to hear that some of the more popular horror flicks out there have had their dark influences in regards to people who experienced the Hat Man. So think of a Poltergeist movie. I heard that the pastor, I mean, look at what he was wearing. and then Freddy Krueger, I heard that his character wearing that odd hat, that it was inspired by these reports of this man in a hat showing up. And then, of course, there's the Slender Man. The Slender Man, oh my gosh, it's like first time I saw it, this fictional character, I'm like, well, that's the Hat Man, and that's a shadow spider behind him. I'm like, okay. And sure enough, the creator of that, he admitted that he had heard about Hat Man reports, and this is where he put his stuff together with. And I'm like, there's a lot of influences and a lot of replication of these dark characters. And what was it? Ghost, the shadow creatures that pulled the guy down to hell. I mean, that was so close to what shadow people look like, and I was just like blown away when I first seen that clip there too. But there's a lot of things that have shown up in entertainment over the years that have directly probably been from experiencers or heard of experiencers experiencing these type of phenomena. So I found that link to be rather fascinating.
Yeah, and you said a couple of things there that made me sort of bring this up, but you're talking about the industry and some of the scripts and some of the characters, and I've often kind of wondered in some of the situations that we've seen where people have either somehow died. It's like in Poltergeist, guys. That was one where there was a lot of tragedies that happened either during the filming and even after. And the first two stars, the mom and dad, they didn't want to come back to do it, I think, the second time. And then I think after that they said no, and they replaced them. But, I wonder, do they open up, portals at this point? And there's a few people I could name, I mean, that are no longer here, but they played these characters, and you wonder, they played them so well that did they open up a door?
That's a really good topic to get on, because I can tell you, in my years in covering these topics, I have had a lot of people around me, unfortunately, get cursed with these things. And, I know it was because they were in touch with me. And I try to tell those that are close to me how to protect themselves. But I also helped to pull together a film at one point on the topic. Not telling my story, though, mind you, which I think it would be, I think it's a story that needs to be told, to be honest. Just because I don't know of anybody who's taken on such horrific topics, and I'm still solo. I'm still doing this, but it's been such a challenge, and I'm trying to educate so many people. But so I put some time and effort into getting this film done. It got made. And you wouldn't believe what happened during the filming of this thing. And it was just based on the phenomena itself, not my story again. But the actress got horrified because something reached out to her. We had so many incidences concerning the crew the director, the producer. It was literally the film, the footage, all of it, all copies of it got distorted or destroyed in certain parts that there was no way to pull it all together to become a film anymore. People were attacked. People got sick. It was such a vicious cycle of bad luck that, everybody eventually quit. I mean, these were
with good reason.
Talented people.
With very good reason.
Yeah. I mean, they watched the film distort before their eyes, and these were like special effects artists from Lord of the Rings, and they walked out. They're like, that just can't happen. I mean, so yeah, in all honesty, I tell anybody who's going to work with me on anything, I'm like, I'm going to tell you how to protect yourself. But these people just, of course, they're just, doing a job. They didn't believe it until it happened to them. So yeah, they do open up portals. And, and as this demonic garbage spreads, and it is spreading at a crazy rate, and it's changing too. I have to report on that at another time, but the changes that are going on, I'm like, oh my God, something's got to be done. And it's one of the reasons why I try to be as vocal as I possibly can to try to get people to protect themselves, because the people are getting victimized, and it's not just a possibility these things may come at people. It's a threat that it's trying to come at everybody. People talk about revelations at the end of the world, we're going to see the battle in the skies. I'm like, the battle is happening in the privacy of people's bedrooms, and you're laughing at them when they tell you about it in the morning. We got to take that whole society of this, belly laughter in the face of evil like that going on, because it's just got to change. People got to start empowering themselves and equipping themselves, and that's my life goal. Honestly, is just to try to come to that point and get people to snap out of this. And it's been a challenge. It has been a challenge. When I first started talking on this stuff, I was in college, and I'm like, I'm a brown girl out there trying to get on the lecture circuit, and the good old boys club was like, who's this kid? It was. But
you're on coast to coast a lot. You're on coast to coast. Yeah.
I am now. Yes, coast to coast quite a bit. But boy, to get out there and get into these different circuits, it was really not easy. So
I completely understand. Yeah. But you use the word that I personally love, and it's empowering, becoming empowered. Again, that's my total go-to for whatever it is. Becoming empowered, knowing what that means for you. Becoming aware. Awareness is key. And, this show that I'm doing today, I just want to say, this is never about fear. It's never about pushing fear or any of that.
Right.
It comes back to wanting people to become more curious, more awakened, more aware, more okay with tapping into greater levels of understanding and knowing about, the ocean of potentials that exist. And, people they throw that around all the time. They say, well, all that exists is God. God is everything. But at the same time, we disqualify anything else that could exist. We narrow what we will allow as a possibility, and everything is possible. It's a matter of what kind of relationship do you want with some of these experiences.
I tell people it's about having no doubts when you're in the face of this thing, having absolutely no doubts that you will be okay and you could stand your ground and reach out to that higher power to throw a brick wall from your chest at this thing, because it's going to take your initiative first off and foremost to do that. It surprises me how many people they just quiver in fear, and they just pull themselves with the blankets over their head, and they just, sit there with that, and I'm like, that's not going to get you anywhere, and it's going to know it could get closer. And if it's too close to you, then we're going to talk about possession, because that's what it's aiming for eventually. So, keeping these things at bay and finding that strength within yourself is super important. And I try to get people to have a lighter sense about this stuff. It's horrific stuff, but I'll tell you, to be honest, in all my books and all my radio shows, laughter, it is a part of what I do. Having a sense of humor, it ticks off evil. It really does.
That's true.
And it weakens them, too. It weakens them. I'm like, that was a pitiful attempt. Did you really try to wake me from my sleep? I'll roll over. It's like it's done.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
absolutely.
You have got to find a sense of humor. Instead of getting so depressed, laugh at, freaking piece of crap came in my room last night. It's how you present it to your friends and family. And get them to not be like pointing and laughing at you, but laughing, it's just dealing with the topic as you would any other topic, which is flawed, which is with humor, which is, whatever it is. But, it doesn't have to be with a flashlight under your chin. Let's take this to a whole different place and make the paranormal a more normal feel where you can be more relaxed as you talk about it, put your feet up, and, have some snacks as you share.
Absolutely.
This stuff is going on.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about, Heidi. It's the normal. It's realizing that it's going on anyway. But real quickly, when you said that about humor, I've often told this joke. Not sure if I did on the show, but I remember one time I was again, I'm sleeping, I'm in bed, and I felt this presence, and there was this ice cold air that just swept across my feet under the blanket. I'm covered up. And I jumped, I jumped up, and then I thought, whoa, what the heck was that? And I was so tired that night. I said, you know what? I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want, but I'm going to tell you right now, I am real tired, and I'm going back to sleep.
Oh, I have done that. Oh, my. I have done that. Oh, that's hilarious.
It's like, I'm going back to sleep. I don't know. You can sit over there, whatever you want to do, but whatever it is, I'm not involved because I'm going to sleep. So it is that kind of humor, and because it takes away whatever the juice is that they're feeding off of, the fear. It's not there, and fear is one hell of a fuel, boy. People just don't understand that energy, what it does. Yeah,
it paralyzes you. That's part of the paralysis, I think, going on, is the fear. But I think that the mood and everything shifts when you can learn to laugh. And sometimes, to my detriment, people are like, oh, well, she laughs too much. I don't know how to take her. Is she being serious? I'm like, heck yeah, I'm being serious, but this is me. This is how I am usually. So it's a matter of being yourself. If I were anybody else, then I'm not being authentic. So be who you are in talking about this subject and these topics as you would with anything else. Because when I'm myself and have a sense of humor, people are more likely to be inquisitive and ask more questions instead of run in fear and say, Heidi, get out. I don't want to talk about this. I know how to clear a room when I want to, but I don't want to do that. I want people to know they can approach me, and it's okay. We can talk about it because I am not the one to judge. I have seen enough.
Yeah,
It's all good.
You and me
good,
both.
So.
Yeah. Now let's get your website before we run out of time. You know how those moments go by. What's your website if somebody wants to contact you or whatever they want to contact you for?
Yeah, they could go to my main website, which is HeidiHollis.com. That's HeidiHollis.com. I'm also a cartoonist, so theoutlanderscomic.com. And I just started up my radio show again, The Outlander Show, that is on uprntalkradio.com. I'm actually on Mondays, 4 to 6 Pacific time. So yeah, I just started that up again, and I've got a lot of websites. I got the otherfword.com. I've got a ton of websites.
She has
but
a lot of stuff. You've got a lot of great stuff, and your work is amazing. I looked at your cartoons, and just a really amazing stuff. So you've got to check her. I didn't realize you had much material. Really, really good stuff.
Thank you. That's all I ever wanted to be, was a comic strip artist, and it's like, oh no, I'm going to make my parents proud and talk about demons.
Just what every parent wants. Just what every parent wants. Yeah, we have I think we have a few more minutes, and we have a couple minutes. But also, Heidi, I want to remind people that we have like 2 minutes. That you see the stuff at the corner of your eyes all the time. You get this shadow stuff flying by. You're watching TV, and something runs right across the carpet or the ground, the floor. So pretty much everybody you talk to have had that experience. It's just that most people try to chalk it up to something else.
They try to discount it. And I tell people there's a physiological reason why we see things in the corner of our eye first and foremost, is because, that's a primitive part of our eye. It's so we can see stuff coming. So it's actually more sensitive to shadows and light is our peripheral vision. So that's why we're able to see them a lot easier that way. So, I'd honestly say 9 times out of 10, when somebody tells me they've seen a ghost, and I've done this to my friends. I'm like, watch this. I'm going to go in this crowd. I'm going to ask them, hey, how many of you have seen a ghost? And they're like, people that raise their hands, 9 times out of 10, it was the Hat Man. 9 times out of 10. I said, I pull up my website and I show my book, The Hat Man. Oh yeah, it's just like oh yeah, I'm familiar. And then they freak out and watch the horror wash over their faces. Like, oh my God, that's real. It's real. Sorry, it's the reality that we're in. So, my top book right now is The Hat Man, and the original book, The Secret War, talking about the conflict in alien contact and shadow people there. I think people will dig it. And if you want to get your faith a little bit straightened up with some comics, I put a lot of comics in it. It's done with like Diary of a Wimpy Kid with the notebook lines and everything. It's called The Other F Word.
Isn't there a free download? Is there a free download as well? Please tell them very quickly.
All my books to the end of this week, I'm going to change it up. All my books are free if you have Amazon Prime. Just go to Amazon.com and get them.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This
Heidi
was fun.
Hollis.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you for definitely being on the show and for chatting with us.
Yeah.
And
I meet up when I get to LA.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Yeah,
okay.
Great.
I have to wear garlic when I meet you, though.
No, you'll be fine. It's all good.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, thank you so much. And thank you to the listening audience. Thank you to our engineer today, Rick Herrera. And, of course, you want to hear the show again, you can check out the archive, or also go to theexpansionzone.com for the archive there. And to find out more about me, my work, and all of this interesting stuff that I do, go to therealsoniabarrett.com. And as always, I like to remind you to live life to its fullest and question everything. Until next time, see you then.
Everyone wants to follow their own bliss.